Graphics cards are basically impossible to get at reasonable prices these days. It's very hard, the market's a mess. So often people are left with a really good system, really nice CPU, lots of RAM, but they can't get hold of a good GPU. So this video, I'm going to see what that looks like. What does it look like when you've got a 12700KF and you pop a 1066GB in it? Now it's going to be nice and short. We're going to just compare it to my minimum spec system, which has got an i5-8400, which is a few years old, only got 6 cores, and it's much slower. So the clock is fast and the IPC is lower. So I'm going to put them side by side and we're going to see the difference, and we're going to see, what happens when you've got an incredible CPU and a low-end GPU. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're at my Lorville test, as always. On the left, we've got the i7-12700KF, and on the right, we've got the i5-8400. And they've both got exactly the same other components. So the motherboard's obviously different, but they both got a 1066GB, and we've got exactly the same 16GB of RAM, which is clocked, I think, only at 2400 megahertz. And yes, they're on the same drive, everything's the same. So we'll see, is this going to be much better than this? Does it matter really that you've got a low-end GPU? Let's have a quick look. So we'll go in and I'll sync up the runs just so they're in the same place. You might not be able to see the FPS, but I'll put the performance up in a bit. But basically, we are in a state where I think this is very jittery and this is really, really smooth. This performs really well. So keep an eye on the right here. You'll see just stutters after stutters after stutters. It does smooth out and it does get better, but that sort of jittery experience that is often people experience with Sisenton, if you've got a really high-end CPU, it doesn't really happen. And my general experience playing this is that I'd be very happy playing on this system on the left. So as we get into the train ride, actually performance isn't particularly different between them. At the start here, when you're in the station, yes, the left-hand side are at 45 FPS, but then when you come out looking across the city, you are GPU bound really in both cases. They're both being pushed pretty hard by the GPU, and they're both dipped under 30 FPS. Now, as we come through the train station, I've zoomed in a bit just so we can get an eye on the FPS. You'll see on the left just that the GPU is being slammed the whole way round, but that means because it's got a good CPU, you're able to get up to 40 odd FPS here, drop into the 30s. Whereas on the right hand side, we're all bottlenecked by the CPU and we're dropping under 20, up to 25, and you just notice that as you come to this section, jitter after jitter after jitter, and then if you left, it's not really that bad. So there is a key difference between the two. Obviously, you'd expect the system on the left to perform better. Now, as we come out here, watch the right hand side, major jitters, and the left hand side, none. As you come out to these ships, I guess the CPU is having to work a lot harder. You're just getting stutter after stutter after stutter, whereas on the left, even though the FPS is only 20 odd FPS, it feels smooth, and that really is the difference. Let's have a quick look at performance. As you can see, there's a 6 FPS difference between them on average, but the most important thing is obviously not the average, but the 1% lows, and probably the 0.1% lows as well. We've seen the footage, we know that they're not the same. I thought I'd whip out the frame time graph for this just to try and demonstrate it. Now, the frame times here, this is for the 12700KF. Look at the scale, you've got to use your incredible magnifying glass, but basically it goes up to about 400 milliseconds. That is not going to be the same. So take a snapshot of that graph, and then we switch over to the 8400, and some of those spikes, the big spikes, this is all of the runs combined. Those big spikes there are those bits at the end where we get to the ships, and we're talking 800 milliseconds, over 1000 milliseconds for some of them, and just in general, spikes that are much worse than this 12700K. So what to make of all this? Well, I think looking back at that graph, although the average FPS is only 6 FPS different, the actual difference is way wider than that. And obviously the lows give you a hint at that, but the smoothness of performance on the 12700KF system blows the i5-8400 completely away. And really, I think we know that CPU is important, but again, if you're looking to build a system right now, please, please, please prioritize the CPU and almost just bung in whatever GPU you've got or you can get hold of. It really isn't the most important thing right now. And obviously, we're not talking about getting a 60 FPS in this system, but the quality of the frames, the smoothness, the consistency of the frame times, all sorts of things, is just much, much better when you've got a really high-end or really fast new CPU. So that would be the main thing. it's obviously the market for GPUs is a mess anyway at the moment. So in some ways, if you can avoid buying new anyway from a scalper or from a retailer charging way too much, that's not a bad thing. But on the whole, I think, yeah, this video really just to show you what it looks like, because most of the videos I make, we put up graphs, put up FPS and everything, but actually to see the footage side by side hopefully gives you an idea. And really, if I had a choice, if somebody offered me a 3090 with a, let's say, 3600 Ryzen 3600 to swap for my 12700KF and the 1060 6GB, even though theoretically that's a much worse system, for Star Citizen I would definitely take the 12700K and the 1060 6GB. It just, for me, the smoothness makes a much bigger difference than the actual overall frame rate, if that makes any sense. So that's probably enough of this one. If you like this sort of technical look at Star Citizen, you can subscribe. If you like this video as well, you can even now join the channel, become a member. But I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye.